Hi everyone, we're going to do chapter 4 today. Just like all the other reviews, we're going to try to fly through the best that we can. Chapter 4 is tissues, glands, and membranes. So what people get caught up on this one is the tissues. Tissues are going to be our hardest just because there's a lot of memorization involved in tissues. The first thing that you want to know with your tissues is that you have the 4 main types: epithelial, connective, nervous, and muscle. These 4, if you can get those headings kind of down, it'll be easier to memorize the types of tissues that fall under those headings. So you're going to have the most epithelial tissues, and we'll go over those. You have a lot of connective tissues, and then some muscle, and then you have one type of nervous tissue. So for these, just keep in mind which type of tissue it is. So if it's, let's say you don't know this yet, but simple squamous epithelium, it would be an epithelial tissue. You have adipose tissue, that would be a connective tissue, okay? So just be able to put them in their proper categories where you would find them. So to start, let's just jump in. Epithelial tissue, I want you to be able to know the definition of epithelial tissues backwards and forwards. So it lines a body cavity, it lines something. So this is the tissue you're going to find on top of a surface or on the center of a surface. It lines something. It does not have a lot of extracellular material. It just is tissues connected by junctions cells that connected by junctions. So there's just not a lot of room for extracellular. That means outside the cell. So there's not a lot of things floating around in these tissues. Another thing to know about these is they regenerate fast. So your skin, it lines your body, right? Because it's on the outside lining your body. It's going to regenerate fast. That's why you slough off a lot of skin. That's why your skin regenerates after like a week. It's avascular, meaning that you do not have blood vessels in this tissue. You have blood vessels under this tissue that can diffuse things to the tissue, but there's no blood vessels found in this tissue. Hi, Alicia. Oh, she's connecting to audio. Hi, Alicia.
Hi.
Hi. Is there something specific you want me to go over, or do you want me to just continue going just from start to finish?
I was just start to finish. I just was reviewing it. I just wanted to tune into this review session to see what everyone was going over, but if I'm the only one here.
No, that's okay. So yeah, lots of people don't know that these are a thing, actually.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, but you're totally happy to just sit and listen if you like. If you have questions, go ahead and stop me. If you want to jump off at any point, go ahead. It's just recorded for test review purposes, lecture review purposes, those kind of things. Okay?
Awesome.
Yeah, so stop me if you have a question, okay?
Yeah, for sure.
I was just talking about your epithelial tissues and characteristics of this epithelial tissue. So we went over cellularity, just meaning that there's lots of cells and not very much stuff or other particles around the cells, but it's mostly just cells. Not a lot of extracellular material. You have polarity, just meaning that the bottom of this tissue is going to be different from the top. So it can change function as you go from top to bottom. It doesn't always have to, but it can. Attachment, so we talked about how this lines a surface. So if it's lining something, it's going to have to attach to the bottom of whatever it's lining. So your skin is going to be attached to either like the fat that you have under there or the muscle that you have under there. It's going to attach to that, and that's just called your basement membrane. So whatever it's attached to is called your basement membrane. We went over it's avascular, meaning that there's no blood vessels found in it. How it gets its nutrients and oxygen is blood vessels go by it, but you're not going to have blood vessels in epithelial tissue. And then it regenerates fast. So it's made up of a bunch of cells. It's really packed together tightly, full of cells, and they regenerate quickly. So that is your characteristics of epithelial tissues. Know those pretty well. What your epithelial tissue is for mostly is it's for protection. So just like your skin, it's lining and opening. Your skin blocks anything from being able to enter your body that's not supposed to be there. It also blocks permeability. So your skin, if you put on lotion, it can seep in, but if you, let's say you had dirt, you don't want that like seeping into your skin. So it protects your skin by allowing only certain things to get through. Sensation, you have a lot of nerves in epithelial tissue, so it provides sensation for you. And then secretions, this is where you're going to find your glands. So your epithelial tissue in your mouth that lines the cavity of your mouth secretes saliva. So that's secretions. Okay, and then intercellular connections. I don't want to lead you astray and say don't study these, but you don't need to know them crazy well. Just know generally what they're for. So tight junctions, just like it sounds, are when two cells come together and they're bound tightly. Nothing's able to get through that junction. It's tightly bound, allowing those cells to be connected, but nothing can travel back and forth. Gap junctions is when there's a gap. So you have this cell and there's a gap connecting these two cells. So these cells can actually communicate really, really easily because they have a little communication gap that allows them to communicate back and forth. This, I want you to know kind of where you're going to find these gap junctions. So it's in the parentheses. Highlight these. So your cilia, we talked about this last time, is when you have little hair-like projections that beat in unison to try to move mucus upwards. So that's going to be your gap junctions that's telling the cilia like beat, beat, beat. It's like a rower on a boat beating its drum saying, okay, we all got to row at the same time. We all got to beat at the same time. It also is found in your heart muscle. Just like your heart, you want your entire heart to beat at the same time and contract. Your gap junctions are how your heart communicates so it can beat at the same time. Desmosomes are just how you have a basement layer here and then you have a cell on top. A desmosome is just a little connection, it's kind of like Velcro, that hooks the cell on top to the basement membrane. Okay, so it just allows your epithelial tissue to attach to a basement membrane. Do you have questions with those? You're good? That's just pretty much all you need to know on those. You don't need to go into crazy detail on what those are. Sorry, you're frozen. Oh, there you are.
Oh, sorry, my internet's pretty bad
Okay.
on my end. Oh, sorry
okay.
about that. I had a question about desmosins.
Mm-hmm.
About them, are they, so they attach, like you were saying, they attach what to the basement level again?
Your epithelial tissues. So your epithelial tissue is going to be found facing the outside world. So anything that's kind of open to the environment is going to have an epithelial tissue on it. So your skin is an epithelial tissue. This tissue in your mouth is epithelial, okay? So it's just found surrounding something or protecting something. And what it's protecting is going to be underneath. So let's say you have your fat. We're going to just use your skin example. So your fat layer, you have your skin cells that are attached to that fat layer. So they're just hooked on to that basement membrane by desmosomes. Does that make sense? So it just holds layers together this way, like up and down. Tight junctions are going to hold it together side to side. Gap junctions are just a different type of junction that can hold it side to side.
Okay, so with desmosins, what was that? I'm sorry.
Sorry, yeah, what's your question?
So desmosins are essentially something on the outside connecting something from the inside, or can it be like inside connecting with inside as well? Or is that only tight junctions and gap junctions?
It would, so they connect, just think of it top to bottom, because you can have like multiple layers of cells held together this way by tight junctions, but on top of each other, the different layers can be held by desmosomes.
Okay.
So desmosomes hold more up and down, tight junctions and gap junctions hold more side to side.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, a little more sense now.
Perfect.
Awesome.
And
Thank
just
you.
kind of know where you're gonna find your tight and gap junctions too. I know it's in parentheses, but it will be important to know. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah. So epithelial classifications. Get to my little picture. Okay. Sorry. My computer's giving me a hard time. Maybe it won't let me share my screen. Sorry, I just got a new computer that works better with the internet, which is awesome, but sometimes it gives me a hard time. What are you seeing right now? Are you seeing me or are you seeing the epithelial tissues?
I'm not seeing anything on my screen currently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know computer troubles. I had on the first days really bad internet, so I couldn't hear anything the teacher was saying.
That's
So
not
I
good.
feel, yeah, no.
Okay, I apologize. I am having a technical difficulty.
All right.
Okay, let's try this again. Okay, what about now?
Okay, I see the epithelial tissue.
Perfect, thank you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. It's fine.
Okay, so epithelial tissue, this is the same one we've been talking about that either lines like a cavity or is found on top of stuff. You have multiple different kinds. Just like you have a first and like a last name, these all have first names and last names. Okay, your first name is going to determine the number of layers you have in your tissue. So simple means one. Simple means one layer. So anywhere you see simple, one layer here, simple, one layer, simple, one layer. Stratified means many layers. So that can either be two, like these examples have, or many. It just is more than one. Okay, so simple means one layer. Stratified means many layers, 2+ layers. Pseudo stratified, pseudo means false. So false stratified. In this example, it looks like there's many layers because the nucleuses are all kind of squampus, not like they were right here. But it actually is just one layer. If you look close, you can see that it's just one layer of cells. Each one of these connects to that basement membrane. So simple means one, stratified means many, pseudo-stratified means it looks like many, but it's actually just one. Okay, and then your last name determines the shape. So squamous means squished. It means flat, but I like to think of squamous as squished. So you can see these are flat cells. Squamous, these are flat. Cuboidal is cube shape. The name kind of gives that one away. And then columnar is column shaped. Okay, so you will need to know, based on the name, you'll need to be able to describe how many layers there are and what shape it is. So if I said stratified columnar, you would know stratified means many layers. Columnar means column shaped. So you'd have many layers of column shaped cells. Okay, simple squamous, you have simple, which means one layer. Squamous means squashed or flat. So you have one layer of flat cells. Sorry, just a second. We got someone else going. Okay. So that's these tissues. That's how you're able to differentiate which tissue, what it looks like is based on the names. Okay, so we're going to start with our simple squamous epithelium. With the different types of epithelium, I want you to know what they're going to look like and where they're found and their function. So I guess all the things are listed in your outline. So function for simple squamous It's one layer of flat cells. So things are going to be able to pass through this really easily. So this is going to be used in gas exchange. I'd rather try to pass through this than the stratified columnar, right? So gases and nutrients are going to be able to pass through this freely. Also, it provides a very smooth surface, which reduces friction. Okay, so you're going to find it in places that you don't want a lot of friction. So simple squamous is for gas exchange and friction reduction. It's one layer of flat cells. And so if you think about the function, you can kind of think about where you'd find it. So gas exchange occurs in your lungs. So you'll find them in your lungs. It occurs in your arteries. So if you think you don't want your blood to get stopped with friction, so it's lined with the simple squamous to help reduce that friction so your blood can flow nicely. And then it's found in your heart too. So that inner layer of your heart is the simple squamous. Moving down to stratified squamous. The big one with this tissue is that it's found in places where you want protection. Stratified squamous is going to be found anywhere you have an opening to the outside world where things could get in. So this is your skin. Okay, your skin protects your body from any junk or nastiness to get inside. So it's going to be protection found in your skin, found in your throat, because when you swallow, it says my connection is unstable. I hope that's okay. When you swallow, you don't want your food scratching. So it's stratified squamous to make sure you don't tear into your tissues. Anywhere you're going to have constant rubbing, constant friction, constant swallowing, you're going to find the stratified squamous. It's found, as you can see, skin, mouth, tongue, vaginal canal, pharynx, and esophagus. So your esophagus is where your food goes down. Your pharynx is where the air goes in and out. So you're having constant airflow going by. Vaginal canal, self-explanatory. Tongue and mouth, that's where your food comes in. Okay, so it's for protection. Simple cuboidal and stratified cuboidal, they are very stratified. Sorry, where's cuboidal? Here we go. Stratified cuboidal is very rare. So I'm actually going to lump these together for you to make it more simple. Okay, so if it's a cuboidal tissue, whether it's simple or stratified, it's going to be found in ducts and glands. Okay, so it's for secretion and absorption. So again, cuboidal epithelium, whether it's simple or stratified, is going to be found in ducts and glands where you are going to have secretion and absorption. Okay, so just lump those two together because they pretty much do the exact same thing. Transitional epithelium. I don't like this picture, so don't pay a ton of attention to this picture. Transitional epithelium is you have cube-shaped cells that will pull and flatten into flat cells. Again, transition is cube-shaped cells that will flatten into squamous or flat cells. And why this is it's like a balloon. Transitional epithelium is like a balloon. If you fill it up, it will be able to flatten out and get bigger. So transitional epithelium allows for distension. That's the word I want you to know on this one. It allows for distension. Since it flattens out, it's able to stretch and distend. The only place you're going to find this one is in your bladder. Okay, so the only place you find transitional epithelium is in your bladder. Next, your simple columnar epithelium often has on top what we call microvilli. So you can see this here. Remember, don't get cilia confused with microvilli. Okay, they're different. So simple columnar epithelium has microvilli. This is the one that increases absorption area. Okay, so it increases absorption. It's an actual folding of the membrane. It's not hair-like projections. It's small little folds in the membrane that help you absorb more by increasing the surface area. So your simple columnar epithelium has microvilli that increases your absorption. It's simple means one layer. Columnar means column shaped, so one layer of column-shaped cells. And this is found anywhere you would want to absorb nutrients. So it's going to be found in your stomach, in your intestines, in your colon, anywhere that you want to absorb nutrients, you're going to find the simple columnar epithelium. In this, you're going to find your goblet cells. Goblet cells we're going to talk about a little bit later, but know that in simple columnar, you find goblet cells. Goblet cells, I like to think of it as they hold a goblet of mucus. What they do is they just secrete a bunch of mucus. Okay, so goblet cells hold a goblet of mucus and secrete a bunch of mucus. Moving on to pseudostratified columnar. Both of you, by the way, if you have questions, please just stop me. Okay? Awesome. Okay, so on to pseudostratified columnar. This looks like it has that microvilli on top, but it actually doesn't. Pseudostratified columnar has cilia. Simple columnar has microvilli. Pseudostratified columnar has cilia. So remember, cilia is the hair-like projections that all beat in unison to move mucus. So you're going to find this pseudostratified columnar in your lungs. Okay, so you find it in your lungs, anywhere you have mucus where you don't want mucus to be. So in your lungs, in your throat, anywhere there's just air, you're going to have this pseudostratified columnar epithelium. And we talked about pseudo means false, stratified means many, so it looks like there's a lot of cells here, lots of layers of cells, I should say, but it's actually just one layer. They're just kind of funky. They're not perfectly lined up like our columnar. They're kind of all in different shapes, but it's just one layer of columnar cells, even though it looks like a stratified tissue. Okay, so pseudostratified columnar, again, cilia, it's going to be found in anywhere you have air, so in your lungs, in your bronchi, in your throat, in your nose, you're going to have this pseudostratified columnar. Stratified columnar is our last one. This one is super rare. It's only for protection. And that's all you need to know about it. It's super rare and it's randomly found in these weird places. And it's just two layers of columnar, so column-shaped tissue. Sorry, cells. Stratified meaning many layers, columnar meaning column-shaped. So many layers of column cells. There we go. I said that better that time. Okay, questions with those before I move on? You guys doing okay? Okay, let's move on to glands. See if I can get new share. There we go. Okay, so glands. You have three different types of glands. Okay, you have your first one is, sorry, back up, I skipped over something. You have endocrine glands and exocrine glands. Endocrine secretes into the blood. Exocrine secretes onto a surface. Okay, so again, endocrine secretes into the blood. Endo means inside. So it's secreting inside your body. It's not going onto a different surface. It's just secreting right into the blood. While exocrine exits its tissue. So you have these on your skin. If you sweat, you have exocrine gland, meaning that that sweat exited that tissue. Your exocrine is when you secrete onto an epithelial surface. So you can kind of think of these. If it says, if you have a question that asks if it goes into the blood, is it exocrine or endocrine? It's going to be endocrine. any surface, anywhere on your skin, anywhere that's not blood, that's going to be exocrine. So watch for that. Now back to the types of glands that we have. We have 3, like I was saying before. Okay, your 3 types of glands. You have your merocrine. You have your apocrine. And you have your holocrine. Okay, merocrine glands are when you just have little bubbles inside, little packages that are released through exocytosis. Okay, so these little packages inside are just released through the cell membrane through exocytosis. This is going to be your mucus, and it's going to be your sweat. So merocrine is going to be that, I feel like I spelled mucus wrong. I did. Mucus and sweat. So merocrine secretes by just secreting little vesicle packages that secrete out, and it secretes mucus and sweat. Apocrine, I like to think of this as popcorn. A portion of this cell is going to pop off. Okay, so apocrine is when this piece of the cell that has little vesicles in it is going to pop off the rest of the cell. Okay, merocrine, little vesicles are secreted. Apocrine is when the top portion pops off. And this is going to be found with our milk production. Doesn't look like it. That's okay. Milk production. Holocrine is when the whole cell just explodes. This is me drawing an exploding cell. The whole cell explodes and all the vesicles are released out into the open. The whole cell explodes. This is going to be your oil glands. Another word for oil that you're going to need to know is sebaceous. So your holocrine glands are sebaceous or oil glands, where that entire cell is going to explode, releasing that oil either onto a hair or onto your skin surface. Questions with those? No?
So I'm sorry. So
Okay.
these 3 crine glands, they all happen outside?
Yes, so
Or
these are all going to be exocrine glands.
okay.
Yeah, sorry, that would have been a good thing to point out.
No
Yep,
problem.
these
I
are
was
all
just thinking,
outside the body. Yep, good connection.
okay, because I was wondering, because we were talking about cell lysis, which is, I don't remember the word, apoptosis or something like that.
The
So I was just wondering
autolysis?
if this is cell destruction. I'm not quite sure. Maybe
Autolysis.
that was
Yep.
it. Where the cell explodes, like the holocrine. So I was wondering, is that something different?
That is a good question. I believe that it is, but it's not in the same way. So when you talk about autolysis, it's when a cell is damaged, when it's not working anymore. The cell will essentially commit cell suicide, so it doesn't replicate and make more damaged cells. Okay, this is different. This is like a programmed explosion. The cell hasn't broken down. It would be apoptosis, like you said. The cell does explode, but it's not because it was damaged. Okay, it's exploding because somewhere needed oil. Somewhere needed to be lubricated, either your hair or your skin. Does that help? Does that make sense?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay. Trying to see how I explain it a little bit better. It would be the same thing. Autolysis is just when a cell is destroyed because it's damaged. Apoptosis is when the cell explodes like pre-programmed. Like in this case,
Okay.
with your holocrine cells.
Okay. Okay, I see.
Yeah?
Thank you.
Does that help?
Yeah. Yes, I got it.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's those. You need to know all of this. Know which one secretes mucus, sweat, milk, oil, and how it happens. Okay, so go over those. Let's see. I'm not going to go over types of secretion of exocrine glands because that's kind of what we just did. Okay, so you don't really just know what we just went over here. This is the foundation knowledge that you will need for glands. This is all you will need to be able to pass your exam. Okay, so classification of exocrine glands by cell number. So uni means one. So you can either have one celled glands, multi means many, or you can have multi-cell glands. So unicellular means one cell, multicellular means many cells. Okay, so our big example of a unicellular gland, or just one gland that secretes something, is going to be your goblet cells. We talked about this earlier. It's going to be a type of simple columnar epithelium, but this gland, what it does is it's a mucus gland, so it's going to be a merocrine gland, but it's only one cell by itself holding down the fort secreting mucus. Okay, it's not a big group of cells. It's just one single cell that secretes mucus. And our big example of that is going to be your goblet cells. Goblet cells secrete mucus, and they are your big example of unicellular glands. And they do it through merocrine secretion. Multicellular glands are all the other ones. Okay, when you think of a gland, you kind of think of, I don't know, it goes like this, and then your skin surface is here. You kind of see them in advertisements for acne when they say like, oh, this gets filled up with junk and then you get acne and it gets inflamed. This is going to be all other types of glands because you have lots and lots of cells all working together for one function. Okay, so there's multiple cells secreting something into this duct or gland. Goblet cells would be like you have all one type of cell here, but this cell is a goblet cell. It's just standing by itself. It doesn't work with all of its other buddy cells. It's unicellular. It's by itself. Questions with that? Good? Okay, clear this. Okay, you have simple glands. This just means what I just drew. It has one canal coming down. So this would be like your skin surface. This is the gland. Or you can have compound glands, which just means that you have multiple branches down in there. So simple gland, compound gland. And then you can have tubular, which these were tubular, where it's like a tube, essentially, or the alveolar, which means it's got like a sac at the bottom, like that. Okay, so you can have tubular compound glands. So that would be like a compound would mean it would have multiple. Sorry, I said tubular, I meant alveolar. So this would be a compound gland since it has multiple little branches, and it would be alveolar because it has the sacs at the end of the glands. This would probably be an example of a compound tubular gland. Does that make sense on those glands? Yeah? Okay. That's all you need to know on those. Okay, so that was epithelial tissue. At the beginning, I said you'll have 4 types of tissue. That was number 1. That has the most content to it, is your epithelial tissues. Epithelial tissues are the ones that have the first name and the last name that describe their shape, and they're found on a body surface. Connective tissue is what's going to be found right under that epithelial tissue. Connective tissue is for support, protection, insulation, transportation, and binding. So it just does everything else that the epithelial is for protection and secretion. Connective tissue does everything else right underneath of it. There are 3 things that every connective tissue has in common. You have specialized cells, extracellular protein fibers, and then a ground substance. So all that means is you have cells doing their job. You have fibers that hold this tissue looking a certain way, and then you have just gel filling in the gaps. So that's what that means. So it's just the structure that you're going to find in all connective tissues. This minus the cells. So if I took out the cells here, the fibers and then that ground substance are going to create what we call a matrix. So your matrix is going to be the fibers plus the ground substance. So the matrix is not alive, okay? Because you don't have any living cells in it. It's just a bunch of fibers and then just kind of jello that these fibers are stuck in, that ground substance. So the matrix is fibers and ground substance together. The cells actually perform the function that we're going to talk about. So classifications of connective tissues, you have connective tissue proper. This is going to be your loose and your dense tissues. You have fluid connective tissue and then supportive connective tissue. And we'll go over those as we go through the types of tissues, but those are the 3 types of connective tissues that you have. In your matrix here, we talked about how you have cells that actually perform functions. So the connective tissue proper cell populations, you are going to need to know each of these cells. So we're going to just go through starting at the top of the list. Mesenchymal cells are going to be your stem cells. Mesenchymal cells are your stem cells. So these can become anything. We talked about stem cells before. They are just premature. They're going to divide into functioning cells. Fibroblasts. Fibroblasts create. So blast means create. So fibroblasts, they create your matrix. Create, I spelled that wrong. You'll learn, I can't spell. And then fibrocytes maintain. Okay, so fibroblasts produce and create the matrix. Fibrocytes maintain your matrix. Okay, so blast means create, cytes means a mature cell, but what they do is they maintain what those fibroblasts created. Adipocytes, adipose means fat. So adipose are the cells that maintain fat tissues. So they maintain fat. They're your big fat cells. Melanocytes, these are a little different because they don't maintain. What they do is they produce color. So these little guys are in charge of giving you your skin color. They're only found in your skin and they just produce color. So if you're a really tan person, your melanocytes are really good at producing melanin, which produces your color. If you are, let's say, African American, your melanocytes are producing a lot more melanin. And if you're pasty like I am, your melanocytes decided that they didn't want to work anymore. So melanocytes produce color. Next, we're going to go down to a different type. We're still on cells of connective tissues, but these perform a little bit different functions. You have macro and microphages. These are your garbage men. They just pick up bacteria. It doesn't matter what that bacteria is. They're just going to stop and eat it and destroy it. They're for protection. Okay, so you get either bacteria or viruses or funguses. These microphages or macrophages just eat or destroy that invading bacteria, virus, or fungus. Macro means big, micro means small. So macrophages eat the big stuff, microphages eat the small stuff. Okay, so these are our first players in our immune function. Next, you have mast cells. Mast cells. These are our allergy cells. So these are what, if you have bad allergies, your mast cells are working overtime. They release what we call histamine. And this just causes inflammation. So you get really stuffy when your mast cells are working too well at what they do. They're in charge of creating an immune response or an allergic response to something. They also release heparin, histamine and heparin. But for just this, I want you to know that it releases histamine to help you combat your invading pathogens, those allergies that come in. Next, you have lymphocytes. Lymphocytes. Lymphocytes are the type of cells that kind of know what's going on. So let's say you had strep throat before. Your macrophages just ate anything in their path. Lymphocytes know what diseases are coming in, and they will replicate to help destroy diseases that have been known before. Okay, so they're a next player in immune function. You don't need to know these super in depth, so if you don't understand them right now, that's okay. We're going to go into them. You have whole chapters on these. Just essentially know that macrophages and microphages, mast cells and lymphocytes are all part of your immune function. So this is immune function. So I'm going to go through these one more time. Fibroblasts create your matrix. Fibrocytes maintain your matrix. Adipocytes maintain your fat matrix. They're your fat cells. Melanocytes produce melanin or produce your skin color. Macrophages eat bacteria or invading pathogens. Mast cells create an allergic response. Lymphocytes attack diseases that you have seen before. Macrophages, microphages, mast cells, and lymphocytes are all part of your immune response. They defend you against pathogens that are coming in. Questions on those? Nope. Okay. Cool. So now that we have the cells that work in our fibers, we're going to move to the actual fibers. So you have collagen. Collagen. These are long, they're like hair kind of. They're just these long, strong fibers. They are like ropes. Okay, so collagen I like to just think as ropes. They just provide strength. Reticular fibers are like a net. They branch and they go kind of like this. Okay. They are a net. They're interwoven, and then they are tough and resistant. So this is going to be for stabilizing things. You're going to find this kind of surrounding organs. So you don't want your kidney, all these things in your kidney to kind of like blub out of your kidney. So it's surrounded by this reticular tissue that holds it in its nice kidney shape. Okay, so reticular just holds things in shape. They encapsulate things. Elastic, like it sounds, is elastic. They look like collagen, but you can stretch them. So this can be stretched out to longer. I don't know how to draw that. Elastic tissue is just like a rubber band. It can bounce back to its shape. You can stretch it and it will bounce back. And then, so we have our cells now. You know your cells, you know your fibers, and then you have your ground substance. You don't need to know much about ground substance. Just know that it's kind of like a colorless jello. It's like clear jello. It just holds your fibers and cells where they need to be. Okay, moving to your actual connective tissues. Our first loose connective tissue, so loose connective tissue, I'm going to just write CT. You have three types. You have areolar, you have adipose, and you have reticular. Okay, areolar connective tissue, there's like 6 functions you see in your book. It's kind of like a filler. So it holds fluid in place. It absorbs shock. It's found under tissue. This is just kind of your filler tissue. You're going to find it in places where you have space. So like under your skin, you have it around your muscles. You don't really need to know, I shouldn't say that. You don't need to memorize that list. Okay, just know areolar tissue is like that one that you're gonna find everywhere in your body. The main place you're gonna find this one is under the skin. And this is the only one that I want you to spend time going over. What it does is it just holds, so you have your skin, that stratified squamous epithelium that we talked about earlier, that's your skin. And then right under that, you have areolar tissue. This just provides a connection point. So the top of your skin can connect down to the areolar tissue, and the areolar tissue just has blood vessels and everything in it that can feed your skin, and it just provides like an anchoring point for that skin to hold on to. Okay, so areolar tissue is just found right under your skin. The book makes it really complicated. That's all I want you to know really on that one. Adipose tissue is fat. So think where you would find fat, and that's where you'd find adipose tissue. You find it on your hips, on your legs, on your stomach, on anywhere you have fat. This is also under the skin, but it's going to be under that areolar. So you have your stratified squamous epithelium, areolar tissue, adipose tissue. Fat is found under that areolar tissue. And it's literally just for storage. It protects you. So if you are a fluffy person and you get hit by something, it protects your bones inside because you're not going to be hit directly on the bone. It's going to hit your fat first. It's going to provide insulation. It's going to provide energy storage. You can use your fat if you aren't able to eat food. You're going to find in this one your adipocytes. This is the only place you find your adipocytes. Remember, because adipose is fat, adipose tissue is fat. So it makes sense that you'd find adipocytes in adipose tissue. Brown fat is baby fat. White fat is grown-up fat. White fat is more stubborn. It's the one that everyone wants to get rid of. Brown fat is the cute baby fat that just provides insulation and cuteness to babies. Reticular tissues is going to be your supporting framework. So you'll see that, supporting framework. Okay, remember our reticular fibers were our net-like fibers. Reticular tissue is made up of these net-like fibers, and you find them surrounding organs to hold that organ in a specific shape. So we used the kidney before. So you're going to find the reticular tissue surrounding that kidney to hold that kidney in its nice kidney shape. to make sure nothing can get into the kidney, nothing can like ooze out of the kidney either. You find it in your spleen and liver and just all organs that are like surrounded. And it just provides a supporting framework to give that organ its shape. It holds it how it's supposed to look. Okay, questions with our loose connective tissues. Doing good? Okay, let's move on to dense connective tissue. So, whoops, didn't mean to do that. I don't know what's happening. What do you guys see right now? There we go. You see a whiteboard?
Yeah, just a blank screen.
Cool. So let's go to dense connective tissue. Okay, you have 3 of these as well. So you have, our first one is going to be your dense regular tissue. This tissue is made up of collagen fibers. That collagen, if you remember, is like our ropes. And what it does is these rope-like fibers, these collagen fibers, just stack perfectly nicely on top of each other. And it creates a really, really strong connection. So if you had a bunch of little strings and you held them all together, it would make a rope-like structure that you couldn't break. You could probably break one string, but if you put a bunch together, you probably couldn't break it. That's this dense regular tissue. It's just putting a bunch of little fibers together to make a strong rope-like tissue. And where you're going to find this is going to be your tendons and your ligaments. Tendons and ligaments. If you think of a tendon, it's like, or a ligament, it's just like a white rope or white tissue that's just really strong and tough that you could pull on. So these are, dense regular is a bunch of collagen fibers stacked nicely that form tendons and ligaments. Dense irregular is going to be when your collagen fibers decided that they didn't care what shape they were in, and they just kind of went wherever they felt like going. Okay, so this is going to provide support in many directions. So if we go back to our dense regular, this rope is only strong if you pull it in one direction. If you tried to pull the little strings apart, it wouldn't be very strong. You wouldn't be able to hold all those strings together. So if I pulled this way, dense regular is not very strong, but if I pulled this way, it's going to be extremely strong. Dense regular, if you pull at any direction, it's going to be strong, right? Because it has fibers going in all different directions. So where this is found is this is going to be found also surrounding your liver, kidneys, cartilage, joints. But the main one that I want you to know is this surrounds bones. So you're going to see the word periosteum. That just means the surrounding of the bone. Okay, so it holds that bone in that really nice bone shape. And if you try to pull a bone one direction, you're not going to just be able to break that bone in half, because this dense, irregular connective tissue holds it in this nice shape. You'll find this oftentimes with that reticular tissue. So just like your reticular tissue surrounded that liver, that spleen, you're also going to find dense regular in those places as well. Okay, so another place you're going to find this is in cartilage in your joints. So you guys are learning about that in lab. You know how you have like your meniscuses, your menisci? That would be your dense irregular tissue as well. Okay, our last one is going to be elastic. This one, as it sounds, is just a bunch of elastic tissue. This looks like dense regular, a bunch of elastic fibers stacked nicely, but If you stretch it, it's going to be able to stretch out and then retract back into its original shape. The big place you find elastic tissue is in your lungs. So your lungs are like a balloon. If you blow into it, you can expand that balloon, but what happens when you stop blowing air into the balloon? It retracts back into its small little balloon shape. It's like an elastic, it will recoil. So that's like our lungs, okay? So it's made out of that elastic tissue. It can expand, but it's going to retract back into its original shape if you stop applying pressure to it. So lungs, you also are going to find them in your spinal column. So when you like bend side to side, you're able to bend because those tissues are able to pull a little bit, and then it can pull you back up upright. And then you find them in your arteries. So as your heart is beating, the blood is pushing on those arteries pretty hard, and it allows that artery to make room for that blood. But the big one I want you to know with elastic is your lungs. That was supposed to be an underline, not a scribble out. Okay. Questions with that? Are we doing good on connective tissue? Good? Okay. Our next type of connective tissue, I guess I lied and said epithelial was the one with the most. Probably connective tissue is the one with the most. Fluid connective tissue is going to be our blood. It's going to be, and our lymph. So blood, hopefully you know what blood is at this point in your life. But our blood is fluid. Lymph is like this fluid that's taken out of your blood that you're going to learn about later, but lymph is also fluid. So that one makes it easy to know that it's a fluid connective tissue since both of these are fluids. So if you got asked, which of the following is a fluid connective tissue? Know that blood is fluid, so it's a fluid connective tissue, and lymph is fluid, so it's fluid connective tissue. Okay, so starting with blood, blood is made up of a matrix called plasma. You've probably heard of plasma. People donate plasma when they want money. I've donated plasma before. The matrix of blood is plasma. The cells found inside this matrix are known as formed elements. Formed elements. You have 3 formed elements. You have red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. So the big thing with this that people get confused is they think plasma is a cell. Plasma is not a cell. Plasma is the matrix. Plasma is the fluid portion. The cells are going to only be your red blood cells, your white blood cells, and your platelets. I would just memorize this and study this and know this really well, okay? Know what your your formed elements are, and then know that the matrix is plasma.
So can you repeat the plasma? It's not what?
Plasma is a fluid. It's not going to be a functional cell that your body uses. It's just the matrix. It's just what you're going to find your cells inside. Okay, plasma is not a formed element. Your only formed elements are red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. Plasma is just what you find those formed elements floating around in.
Thank you.
Okay, lymph. Just know that it's a fluid connective tissue. Okay, it helps with your immune function. We're going to have a whole chapter on that. We can go over more about that when we get to that chapter. But you just need to know that it is a fluid connective tissue. Okay. How are we doing? Good. Do you want a break or do you want me to just finish? We've got like a page and a half left. Break, or do you want me to just power through? Yeah, I'll just keep going then. How's that? Okay, our next type of tissue we're still in connective tissue. So remember, we had our dense connective tissue. Now my mind just went blank because you have dense, you have your loose, there it is, pulled out of my brain. Loose connective tissue, dense connective tissue, fluid connective tissue, and then you're going to have your supporting connective tissue. So again, your loose connective tissue, dense connective tissue, fluid connective tissue, and supporting connective tissue are all connective tissues. Okay, so we're kind of lumping. We had our epithelial, now we're still in our connective tissue, even though there's so many different types that don't seem super related. Okay, so next we go to our supporting connective tissue. There we go. Okay, this is going to be your cartilage and your bones. Okay, so your cartilage is places that need support that still need a little bit of movement. So you can't have it completely solidified, but you want a very defined structure. So here on your neck, you can kind of feel, if you touch your neck, you can feel these lumps. Boop, boop, boop. You have cartilage that holds your airway open, but you still need to be able to breathe and expand. So it's not a bone. You still need to be able to move. So it's not a bone. Cartilage just provides support in places that still need a little bit of movement. So it's not as hard as bone. Your nose is cartilage. That's why it can move. Your ears are cartilage. It holds that shape so it can perform its proper function, but it's not solidified like a bone. Cartilage, one thing that you really need to know about cartilage is there's absolutely no blood flow in cartilage. That means that it is avascular. Okay, so there is no blood flow in cartilage. That means that if you break cartilage, it's a lot harder to fix because you can't get the nutrients from blood that you need to fix it. So it takes a really long time to fix cartilage. You have your cells in cartilage, I kind of swapped around, are chondrocytes. Chondrocytes. They're found in lacunae. I can't write an E because I ran out of room. But chondrocytes are found in lacunae. Your matrix is just a flexible proteoglycan matrix. So you don't need to know what that means. That's super in depth. Just know that it's flexible. You can move it. It's not going to be like bone where it's stuck in this hard matrix. It's kind of a fluid matrix that still provides some structure, but allows for movement. The outer layer is going to be your perichondrium. That's going to be dense, irregular connective tissue. And just like I talked about, dense, irregular tissue covers bones. It also covers cartilage. But really just know bones is going to be the one that you really want to know on that. Okay, so this is what you need to know on cartilage, dumbed down a little bit. Bones, you can think of your bones. What do your bones help you do? Your bones help you move. Your bones keep you upright. Your bones actually store a lot of nutrients. And then your bones also are where your blood is created, which is interesting. Lots of people don't know that. Unlike cartilage, your bones do have blood. So that means it is vascular. V-A-S-C-U. There is blood flow to your bones. That's why you break an arm, you can put a cast on it, and a few weeks later, you're all healed up. Your bones do have blood flow, so good blood flow. The cells that are found inside your bones are called osteocytes. Osteocytes. These osteocytes are also found in lacunae, but they communicate with each other via canals called canaliculi. Okay, so you have an osteocyte here living in his lake, and then he uses a canal to talk to another osteocyte that's over here living in this lake. Okay, so these osteocytes communicate via canals called canaliculi, while they sit in their lakes or their lacunae. They don't move, they're stuck in their little lake, but they communicate via canaliculi. Okay, you'll learn more about that later. It's just probably important to know right now, if you know what I mean. The matrix of this is hard, just meaning that ideally, you can't break it. It's not bendable. You can't just take your humerus and then bend it in half like you could like your cartilage in your ear. You want it to be durable and strong, okay? Your matrix is just this hard calcium salt matrix. Okay, questions with connective tissue. That was so much information. You guys good? Yeah? Okay. On to nervous tissue. So we just did connective tissue, we did epithelial tissue, and now we're on to our fourth type of tissue. This is way, way short compared to the other ones, okay? You just have one type of nervous tissue, and it's called a nerve. It would be nice if all the tissues could be like that. Doop, doop. Draw my little nerve here. Okay, here is what your little nerve looks like. Okay, your nerve has, right in the middle, you have your cell body. That one's pretty self-explanatory, makes sense. Oh no, what's happening? Okay, so your cell body is where your nucleus is found. Out coming off of that cell body, you have dendrites. Okay, so dendrites receive information. So I'm going to have information as like a little yellow lightning bolt. You see information coming in. The dendrites pick it up. It travels through the cell body. Then it's going to move down this long thing called an axon. Okay, so information comes in the dendrites, moves through the cell body, then moves down the axon, where it will be released from the axons either to another dendrite or to a muscle or to wherever this little impulse was going. That's a good lightning bolt. Okay, so you do need to know where these are found and kind of what their function is. So dendrites receive information, cell body controls the cell, axon sends impulses away from the cell body. Okay, and you'll find this anywhere you have nerves. So your brain, your nerves, your spinal cord. Okay. Questions with that? Pretty easy. We'll go a lot more into nerves. Okay, now this, I hate how this book is outlined, but do you guys have membranes next in your book? Does it say membranes? Okay, membranes are not a type of tissue. we still have our fourth type of tissue, which is muscle. So I'm going to jump to muscle and then come back to membranes. Muscle. Okay, so we had our epithelial, we had our connective, we had our nervous, and our fourth is going to be our muscle tissue. Muscle tissue, you have three different types. You have your skeletal, you have your cardiac. What is happening? Cardiac. And then you have your smooth. You have a table in your book. This is going to be a super important table that's going to come up multiple times as we study muscles again, as we study like junctions and stuff like that. You will need to know this table. Okay, so I'm not going to go through every single detail because I can read just like you. Just a few differences that I want to point out is that skeletal muscles has many nuclei, meaning that one skeletal muscle cell has like 50 nucleuses inside of it. It makes it super unique. Another thing about it is it's striated. So if you look at it, it's going to have little lines on it like this. So your skeletal muscle cell is really long and skinny. It has lots of little nucleuses in it, and it is striated, meaning it just has little lines on it. Another thing that I want you to know on this is it provides body heat. This is why you shiver. When you're shivering, your skeletal muscles are contracting. It's producing heat. Okay, so that's skeletal muscle in a nutshell. Cardiac muscle. Is cardiac muscle striated? Yes or no? Do you guys know? Yes. So just like skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle is also striated. But skeletal muscle was this long, skinny muscle. Cardiac muscle is branched. So they have little Y shapes. That's bad. Here we go. Do another Y shape. And so on and so forth. And it all connects and makes more of like this branchy network. They are striated, like you said. One thing about cardiac muscle is it is connected by gap junctions. So right here, where this cell connects with this other cell, you have a gap junction. We talked about these before. Gap junctions are when you have two cells coming together, but there's a little gap for communication. So this cell can talk to this cell. So there's that communication. These gap junctions in cardiac muscle is known as intercalated discs. Okay, so these gap junctions are known as intercalated discs. It's not the striations, it's the darker lines that you find connecting two cells together. They're known as intercalated discs. And these so gap junctions allow both of these muscles to contract at the same time. That's why your heart can beat all at one time. Okay, so that's the purpose of those gap junctions. Smooth muscle. Smooth is named after the fact that it does not have striations. And it is football shaped, so it looks kind of like this. Okay, so smooth muscle does not have striation, and they call it fusiform or football shaped is what I like to say. This is known as your visceral muscle. This just means that it's inside your body. Okay, so your smooth muscle is known as visceral muscle, and it is found inside your body. And that's all I really want you to know, or you need to know on that. Look into it if you want to know more. But it's smooth, it does not have striations, and it is found inside the body. Good with muscle. Yeah? Okay, now we're going to go back to membranes, because now we're finished with tissues, we're going to jump into membranes. Okay, that's out of order in my mind. Membranes. So you've learned a little bit about membranes already. Mucous membranes are found in body tracts that have opening to the external environment. So mucus are found in openings to the external environment. Okay, and what this does is exactly like it sounds. It puts mucus onto a surface. So if you remember back to our goblet cells, our unicellular cells is our mucus cells. They just dump their goblets of mucus into the external environment. So your inside of your intestines, if you think about it, is the external environment, the inside of your intestines, because the food you eat out here, you put it into your body and you're just one hollow tube. Okay, it's not part of your internal cavities. So you will have these on the inside of your intestines, because that's still considered external environment. Next, we have our serous membrane, which you guys have learned about in previous chapters. This is when you have a visceral and a parietal membrane. Visceral is going to surround a cavity wall. Parietal is going to sit right on an organ. And then inside, you're going to have fluid. Okay, so let's say this is the liver. Here's your liver. That's a very badly drawn liver. And this is your body cavity wall. So this is your cavity wall. Sitting on the wall, you're going to have your parietal. And sitting on your liver, you're going to have your visceral. In between your parietal and visceral membranes, you're going to have your serous fluid. Okay, so parietal lines the cavity wall, serous fluid fills the gap, visceral lines your organ. Hopefully that is a review. This serous fluid just makes it so that your liver, every time you move, won't rub on that wall. It just prevents friction. Okay, so serous fluid just prevents friction. Think if every single time your heart beat, it knocked up against the wall, that would cause a lot of organ damage and wall damage, and you probably wouldn't live very long. Okay, so that serous fluid just provides a little bit of a cushion so it doesn't have to rub against the wall. I would just memorize the definition of serous membranes from your outline. So just start that, mark it, memorize it. Because when you see, this makes sense, but when you actually see the words that make up the definition, it could get confusing. So just know that definition from the book. Remember, serous membranes are named based off where they're found. So if they're found on the pleura, pleura means lung. So if you have parietal pleura, it's the parietal membrane on your lungs. Visceral pleura is the covering on your lungs. Pericardium, cardium means heart. So parietal pericardium lines the cavity where your heart sits. Your epicardium is another name for visceral pericardium. Epicardium is visceral pericardium. They're used interchangeably. So don't get confused by that in your book. But the epicardium or visceral pericardium is found on your heart. And then peritoneum is any of your guts in your main cavity. So like your intestines or your liver or any of those that are in that abdominal cavity, that's going to be your peritoneum. Cutaneous membrane is our next. So go back to my blue. So cutaneous. Cutaneous is your skin. Okay, so we talked about how you have the layers you have on top. You have your stratified, squamous. Then you're going to have your areolar right under that. Then you are going to have, you could have fat right here. Sometimes you don't. And then on the bottom, you're going to have your dense, irregular. Okay, know this order of your skin. Know that the top on the outside is your stratified squamous. Right under that, you have areolar. And then down at that basement where all of this is going to connect is that dense, irregular connective tissue. And then synovial membranes is what you've been learning about in lab. Synovial is when you have a sac of fluid cushioning a joint. So you have a bone coming in right here and a bone coming in right here. Your synovial membrane is going to make a little cavity and fill it up with fluid. My fluid is going to be green. Okay, so it just provides cushion on joints so you can move freely. Okay, that is everything. Do you have any questions about anything I went over? You guys doing okay? Good? Okay, awesome. You guys are awesome. Good luck on your test if you haven't already taken it, test 1. Email me if you have any questions.
Hey, Sarah.
Yeah,
I have a question, but it has nothing to do with this.
that's
Do you
okay.
want to stop the recording?
Yes, sounds like a good plan. Let's see. And then stop recording.